Hello. Welcome to the Empowered Artist Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Apple, a multi-hyphenate actor, educator, acting coach, writer, dog mom, and founder of this vibrant community that champions artists as they carve out their own unique paths in this wild industry. Whether you're just starting out, in the thick of it, or seeking a bit of artistic fuel to expand your toolbox, you're in the right place. In this space, we'll have honest conversations, share actionable strategies, tips, and resources, and delve into the messy yet beautiful journey of living a sustainable, creative life. We unmask the reality of life as an artist, from navigating career highs and lows to nurturing your full human well-being. I chat with women and non-binary guests who share their personal stories, helpful learnings, and hearts to help you unlock your artistic potential, expand your knowledge, and show up fully and fearlessly in your artistry and daily life. Before we dive into this week's conversation, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If today's chat resonates with you, please leave us a review. It helps us reach even more incredible artists just like you. And hey, feel free to spread the love. Share this podcast with a friend or post it on your socials, making sure to tag at Empowered Artist Collective and at @JenniferApple_ so we can chat with you there. All right, grab a cup of something cozy, settle in, and let's get to it. How can curiosity become a roadmap for directing meaningful human-centered theater? In this episode, as part of our Director mini-series, I chat with director and dramaturg Amy Marie Seidel, who shares her approach where sound, scent, light, language, and presence all carry weight. Amy talks about her relationship with Tectonic Theater Company, being mentored by Moisés Kaufman, and her experience with Here There Are Blueberries and Machinal. She offers a powerful reminder of the importance of following artistic curiosity without judgment, creating space for rehearsal room humanity, trusting the brilliance of your collaborators, and embracing the flexibility of creating in real time. Together, we reflect on the power of letting go of rigid expectations, because the more forms we allow ourselves to explore, the more layered and resonant our work becomes. This episode is a reminder that directing isn't about control, but rather about connection, listening, and staying awake to the magic unfolding before you. Enjoy. Amy Marie Seidel, welcome to the space.
Thank you so much for having me. Truly, it's an enormous honor.
For anybody who does not know you, who are you today?
Today, I am an artist. And today my brain is at least 95% inside of the theater, inside of specifically a play that I'm working on right now called Machinal that's going up at City Center. But I also today, since it's my day off, I'm trying to take care of the other 5% of me. And I have a little perfume class later today, planning on getting some bagels, maybe looking at some trees. So
yes,
that's who I am today.
Just looking at the trees, or are we going to engage with the trees in any way, shape, or form?
I might hug them. I've been known to do that before.
Yeah, I feel like the older I get, the more I feel the need to touch a tree. I mean, I tell people to touch grass all the time, but I feel like the tree holds more weight. There's something about depending on the tree, like how you can hold. Anyway, this isn't.
Oh no, absolutely. I can get deep into it. I recently went to Muir Woods. When I was working at Berkeley Rep, it's a very short drive away. And those trees are just unlike anything I've ever seen before. And I had a full-on spiritual experience at Muir Woods, hugging trees, just living my best nature nymph life.
Yeah. I went to grad school out in San Francisco, so I know those trees quite well. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's one of those things that you think you know them, and then you go back, and then you think you've experienced a version again, and then you go back, and then you're reminded over and over and over again about, I mean, for me, this just becomes like an existential thing about just like size and your role on the earth and like nature. And like you're just like, all right, this is a perspective moment. We need this more often.
My favorite thing about them is they're so large that they basically suck up all of the rainwater resources for the forest. But they don't keep it all to themselves. They're one of the few trees that can actually take up water with their leaves. And so they just take up like enormous amounts of water. And then they send the water through their roots,
the root system,
to the other plants in the forest floor. And so they're teaching us all how we should be sharing our resources.
Ugh. Ugh, it's so beautiful.
So good.
And also just like noting the nature behind you in your little corner for anybody who is not tuning in visually to the video. There's like a beautiful little, it feels like a little Muir Woods moment, but in New York.
My peace lily is gaining a bud just now. Very exciting.
I would pull mine too, but it's far away. But mine is as well. One's dying, but one's thriving. And I think that's also a metaphor for life.
Bingo. That's exactly how it goes, right?
Just obsessed. Also, just a tangent before we dive into all of this. Can we talk about your perfumery? Or maybe this is part of the story. How are we here?
How are we here?
Both?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
So I sought out to find a signature scent a couple years ago. And I was like, it's time. I'm an adult. I'm going to go find the scent that is perfectly me. And
were you always into perfumes? Or this was just like a moment that came over you?
I was always into smells.
Okay.
Notably, the boat gas station is my favorite smell in the world.
Is this should I know what this is?
No, just like a gas station meant for boats.
That has okay. Noted.
Yeah,
I didn't
and
know
it smells like gas, but also
boats.
dirty lake water.
Okay.
And that's what I like about it. But I've always sort of like smelled things, like sort of huffed things like gasoline. That's horrible. Or like, other
Were you a
things
marker
that I just
fan
think
in
smell
school?
good. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Smelling the markers.
I'm understanding. Yeah.
Scented markers also. I was very into just smelling things.
Okay.
And then when I went on this signature scent finding journey, in keeping with who I am, I couldn't pick one without smelling every fragrance that is offered on the market. Just like when I was looking for a rug, I said, have I looked at every rug on the internet before I make this decision? Very, very research oriented. Yeah. And so in doing all of this, I just got more and more curious and was like, well, what notes are in these perfumes? What natural ingredients make up these notes? And then I started being able to sort of smell something and really discern what was in it. And I found that so exciting. And so I started taking classes. And I've taken quite a few classes with the Institute for Art and Olfaction out of LA now.
Wow.
And among other sort of like indie perfume teaching places. But it's just been like so wonderful to get myself into the soft animal of my body and out of my head. Because it's very hard to intellectualize the sense of smell. But it's very easy to feel and feel how it brings us back to memory. And
nostalgia.
Yeah. And so I actually bring fragrances into my rehearsal room. I bring an entire bowl of samples on day one. And
oh my God.
People always in breaks will smell them and exchange their thoughts about them. And then if they really like it, they'll just take the sample home.
I love this.
Yeah, it's fun.
I feel like we don't often get to share scents, like with a T, not like sense, or like to sense, like scents, just like ASMR that, but just because it is such a personal thing, I feel there's something about that particular. Yeah, I don't think I've ever been like, let's share scents that I relate to that means something to me and then share that with you. It's more like, here's a picture and you can see this thing, or here's this food that you're tasting that means something to me. Like the other senses are different than these scents.
Smell I think is entirely undervalued in our current society. Yes. It is so animal of us to have that sense. And it is something that we still use to keep ourselves alive in terms of does this food smell good or does it smell like it should be thrown away, Yeah. And it is useful to us, but it also is just, I think, an untapped sense of pleasure and connection. And I found a really wonderful community in the perfume world where people are really doing that. And it's one of my favorite things.
I love it. Can we talk about the marriage then of this with your directing and how maybe that informs it, how it's probably some sort of loop and cycle and circle, I'm imagining, but how did we come to the creative part in the directing land from that with that in conjunction with and all of the above?
Absolutely. Well, the directing came far before the smells came.
Right. Well, the smells were always there. You just maybe weren't
that's
looking
right.
as deeply.
The boat gas station was always there.
Yeah, was always there.
But yeah, I mean, I think we hyper specialize in our society a lot. We're told that we have to be the best at some very niche and specific thing. Whereas I'm a theater director, I'm a person who is interested in smells. I'm a person who likes to write things. I'm a person who interviews and edits those interviews into stories. I'm a person who I like to paint in my spare time. I'm not very good, but all of that is this expression. And during the pandemic, I learned more how to play ukulele, and I wrote some bad songs and, sang. And I just think that the more that we're in touch with our different modes of expression, especially in the theater, when you're directing, you are expressing yourself through so many different forms simultaneously.
Yeah.
You're collaborating with so many different experts simultaneously. Just one singular moment of a play will have light, sound, potentially smell, staging, picture, acting, emotion, color, all of these things. Just so as a theater director, to be as in touch with as many different elements as possible, I think is essential.
I love it. How did you become that part of yourself, or how did you discover that this was a calling, or how did you know that this was the land you wanted to fall into? I guess I'm asking you to let's go back just a hair.
Yeah, I'm happy to go back. It definitely, there is a moment that it began for me, like so many people. I was 3 years old, and my parents took me to see a professional production of Fiddler on the Roof in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
Where I'm from. And my mom was like, all right, we're going to stay for 15 minutes. The kid's going to start getting antsy and I'll take her out. And Joe, you can stay for the rest of the play. And I sat there for that 3-hour production, eyes glued. And from then on, I watched the 2 VHS set of the Fiddler on the Roof film from the 70s until I wore out that cassette tape, VHS tape, and forced all of my little 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old friends to watch it with me. And they were all like, maybe let's watch the Barbie TV show. And I was like, maybe let's watch Fiddler on the Roof. Yeah. And think about intergenerational change. And, I was very intense as a child, and honestly, I still am. But then that passion I started playing the cello when I was in 4th grade. And I had this very single-minded desire to play in the pit orchestra of the Fiddler on the Roof, to play the cello. And then I moved when I was around 12 years old, and they didn't have an orchestra at that school anymore. And so instead of doing orchestra, I did chorus, and very easily sort of slipped into the theater kid world. And I was bullied a lot. In 4th and 5th grade, I was a very chunky kid, and I was a big old nerd. And I didn't really find my place until I found theater, and I felt welcomed. And I think that's all it takes, is for someone to feel like they belong, and
to be seen. Also, I think to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other little weirdos in the theater world. And the funny thing is, these people I'm talking about, I met when I was 11 years old, and they're still my best friends.
I love
it. And, those of us who did Oklahoma together in the 7th grade, we saw each other, and we still see each other. And I think that that's usually all it takes to want to engage in something for the rest of your life, is to feel like you belong. So that was the very early impetus for me. And so from then on, I was like, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. Yeah. And as the overambitious human that I am, I knew that Broadway was in New York.
Yes.
And Broadway was the theater, 11-year-old brain. It's like Broadway. And NYU was also in New York, which was Broadway. So from the time I was 11, I said, okay, I'm going to NYU for musical theater. And I just sort of did everything in my power to make it happen. And then I was on the plane at 18 years old to New York, moving to New York. And I thought, I did it for 5 seconds. And then I thought, but what do I do now?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that after you get the goal, it sort of continues. And I actually had this existential moment, because I was like, I only got to sit in the satisfaction of reaching my life goal for about 5 seconds. And then I started having new goals. And freshman year of college, I read this book called Mastery by George Leonard. And something that it talks about is we're so used to just looking up the ladder and climbing up and climbing up and climbing up. And once we reach the next rung, then we just look up and we climb up and we climb up. And we never appreciate the rung that we're on.
Yeah.
And the real way to sort of become the best at a craft is to be where you are and really enjoy and invest in that part of the process. And so from then on, I fail at this every day, but I try to, instead of just looking up, I try to like look where I am and enjoy the moment that I am in now. Because I am so naturally ambitious that I'm like, no, chill out for 1 second and appreciate this moment. But long story short, I went to NYU for musical theater, 8:30 a.m. ballet, the whole thing, tap dance, you name it. And I couldn't find myself again in that world. I didn't see myself in that world. I didn't feel like I excelled enough in the dance or music world. And it was I studied abroad, and then I came back and I did a clowning show with the director Orlando Pabotoy, who is an absolute genius. And then I did a project of a production of the Laramie Project, which is a show by Moisés Kaufman and Tectonic Theater Project. And it blew my little musical theater mind, because I learned that all the people who made this play, they went to Laramie, Wyoming. They learned about the story. They interviewed people. They came back with all of that material. They wrote the play together in a collective. They devised it. And then they were in the play together. They oftentimes played the people they interviewed in Laramie. And I had no idea that was an option. And so that really changed my life. And I decided that I wanted to do anything I could to work with Tectonic Theater Project. And of course, the first email that I sent them very eagerly did not get a response at all. But then I had a friend who was an intern there, and they said, hey, you might be good for this thing. They're looking for a PA for Moisés Kaufman, who's the artistic director there, just for this gala that they're working on. And I was like, yeah, sign me up.
Yeah.
Like, free work, no pay, who cares? I get to be a part of this exciting thing. And I was like, what does it entail? And my friend Zena, she's like, coffee, copies, you're competent, no worries. And I was like, yeah, okay. I'm like, straight out of college. And the first day of rehearsal for this gala, which all I know, by the way, is it is a gala for the company. That's all I got. And the first day I get a text from Moisés Kaufman, who I'd never met at that point. And he says, hey, I'm going to be like 90 minutes late for rehearsal. Can you run rehearsal?
Wild.
And I was like, sure. And so I walked into the room not knowing what we were working on.
Or who these people are at all.
Who these people, no, nothing.
Yeah.
I know nothing. I walk in and it's Zach Grenier in the room, who I only recognize from The Good Wife. And we're working on a play called 33 Variations. We're working on a scene from it, which is a play I now know. But unfortunately, at that time, I did not know. Nobody told me I should know it. So we listened to the variations, the music that the play is based on together. And we had like the most amazing meditation on this music and what it brought up for us and what it might bring up for the character. And I BS'd my way all the way through that. And at the end of it, Moisés comes in and they actually start staging the scene. And Zach is like, you're such a promising young director. I would love to follow you. And I was like, in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm not a director. He's like, yeah, you're the associate director for this. I'm like, yeah, I was not. So that was kind of how I got thrust into directing for the first time. And very long story, as short as it can go. From there, Moisés just appreciated the fact, I think, that I had a portable charger that he could use. And I
doubt it was only that, but sure.
Well, it was at least that.
Yeah.
And he kept on asking me back as a PA,
for the portable charger. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then I started just naturally making notes of everything and doing a bunch of research. And Tectonic's work is always so research based. And so I just started having the answers when they were like, oh, what date did this event happen? And I would just be able to answer. And so from that, he asked me to be a dramaturg on one workshop, eventually a dramaturg on production, eventually an associate director for a couple different projects, and then a deviser, eventually a company member. And most recently, it sort of culminated in, I've worked for 9 years on Here There Are Blueberries, which is a play that just went up at New York Theater Workshop, where I was the associate director, dramaturg, and one of the devisers of that project. So my home company has definitely been Tectonic Theater Project after all those years. And Moisés has been really the reason that any of my career has done anything whatsoever. So that family to me is everything.
I love it. Thank you for sharing all of that. Again, this series exists to show, I really am fascinated by the idea that language dictates so much of how we operate and move through the world, and yet we all enter the same words differently in some way, and the idea that thus far we've shared, you'll be the third in the series thus far, that everybody labels themselves as director, and that all three of these human beings do it differently, have landed there differently. And I think for me, it's really important to show that words hold emotional meaning and different access points for everyone. And that if we all can understand that is the human experience with relating to one another, then I think we'll be more okay. So it's beautiful to hear, first of all, that arguably this now title that you have was bestowed upon you from somebody else, but be in a space that you didn't even think that you were doing it. There's something very beautiful to me around you just simply showing up from where you were in the space that you were called to in a way that you could only do in that moment, and then somebody experienced that as directing and then told it to you, and now here you are. Not because of that and only that, but I just think that there's something quite beautiful about that.
It is quite beautiful.
Yeah, that people sometimes mirror things we don't know or see within ourselves, or we experience it differently than the way it's being received, and vice versa.
Absolutely. I definitely had to be told that I was director. And then once I was told that, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. I had directed in high school a short play as a part of a little festival that we did. And I thought it was just a sort of fun, moment for me, and that I was going to go and often be a performer. But then once Zach and then Moisés told me, no, you're a director, I was like, oh, that actually makes all of the things about myself make sense. It also, it's a word that is so total in terms of the art form, similar to what we talked about before, is that you're sort of taking care of the entire piece. You're taking care of the entire vision. And it's good for somebody who's a little bit of jack of all trades and is able to step away and collaborate with the people who are the experts in each of those elements. And that's something that I really learned working with Tectonic and the way that we devise theater. For people who don't know, we devise theater with a method called moment work at Tectonic. And one of the things that does is it sort of turns the typical way that we make theater on its side. So usually there's a playwright who comes out with a play and hands over the words to usually a director and producer, who then start working with designers, and then they bring in a company, and then it all sort of is bottom up in that way, and it's all dictated by text.
Yeah.
And Tectonic really likes to turn that on its side and say, what if we created theater with the understanding that all the other elements of the stage tell just as much story as text does? When you think of your favorite moments, the most impactful moments in theater, usually the things that stick with us aren't necessarily specific words.
Right.
They're usually sort of visceral events that happen that combine maybe music, maybe lighting, maybe costume, virtuosic performance. And so we say, what if we bring all of those things into the room from go? And it's kind of amazing how many things can be told through the other elements. We've had all of our designers in the room very early on working on Blueberries, for instance, and we knew we wanted to play with these sort of desks that they're drafting desks so they can move up and down. Mm-hmm. And so we were playing with these desks, and then we had our lighting designer, David Lander, there, and our projections designer, David Bengali. And Bengali starts projecting onto the front of the desk as it's turned down. And then David Lander takes these LED tube lights that he had and he duct taped them to the desk. Mm-hmm. So they create this frame. Mm-hmm. And then that's how the form of how we tell that story come to be. And so much of that story in particular is told through images. Mm-hmm. And so the way that we highlight those images and project them and use them as a part of the story is unique because we had all of those elements from early days.
Hi, actor friends. Talking to you. If finding the perfect monologue has you feeling stuck, I've got just the thing. I've put together a free monologue selection toolkit just for you. It's packed with resources, free and paid options, plus tips for choosing, editing, and customizing pieces to showcase you. Head over to jenniferapple.net/freebie and stop avoiding the auditions that ask for a monologue or waiting for the perfect piece to simply fall into your lap. Dive into this free toolkit that I set up just for you that'll set you up to feel agency over your process and artistry. That's jenniferapple.net/freebie and get started on finding your next go-to monologue. I'd love to hear your process when you have either set idea or when you come up with idea and then go to do the idea, or if you are working the more usual way of like text up, or what would you say would be your directing process, or is there one?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's hugely different depending on the material. Mm-hmm. For instance, Machinal that I'm directing right now is a pre-existing work written in 1927 by Sophie Treadwell. It's pre-existing. The text is there. It's also very heightened text. It's very much an expressionist piece, taking young woman who's at the center of the story, what's happening inside of her, and expressing it outwards through unconventional, poetic, rhythmic, and repetitive text. And so we are taking that play and we are extending that expressionism to all the other elements as well. So that one is very different from, something like Here There Are Blueberries, where it starts with us doing interviews and having to create something from the ground up. Mm-hmm. But for Machinal, I still incorporate a lot of those devised methodologies just because that's who I am and how I work. So the first day of rehearsal for Machinal, we did a little devising session. And we played with all of the noise-making machines that we had in the space. And we did an exercise where everyone sort of creates a tiny little bit of theater with these noise-making machines. What can they do that is unique? In what ways can we use them in this production that maybe you wouldn't think initially that we would use them that way? And Moisés always says this, which is the actor is the most underutilized resource in our theater. Because, yes, absolutely. There's no actor who is not also a deviser and a generative artist. Mm-hmm. And
they just need permission or a space to feel like they can lean into that part of themselves. But
right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so often it's felt like, I think, in rehearsal rooms that's not welcome, that is overstepping your position as the interpretive artist. And I think that's just a waste because also, there are people in our rooms who have very specific virtuosities. And if I just said to them, okay, you're going to stand here, you're going to do this, and then this is going to happen, I might not even know that, for instance, there's an actor in our company, Soph Metcalf, who is incredibly athletic and has a lot of gymnastic abilities. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't know that, then we wouldn't be using them in the show. And much, maybe for better and or maybe worse, now we have Soph doing the most athletic show because they can, and they're eager to share and offer. And see what their instrument can do. And there are other people in the company who have immense musical talents and dance talents. And because we know all of their tools and they have this ability to offer those things, there are things happening in our play that if it just came from my mind, I wouldn't even know to ask folks to do certain things. So it's just my job to really pull out all the tools that we have with our unique group of people and to set what those are and to curate the overall experience of the audience in terms of both dramatic as well as theatrical tension and build and making sure that it's satisfying for the audience. But I don't know. It's boring to me if it just all comes out of my head.
Yeah. When you finally get folks in a room and you have an idea maybe in your brain of like what the thing is becoming, knowing what the people you have in the room have to offer or what they're willing to share, do you go home at night and draft a little plot of like, okay, I know that this person's super athletic and this person knows how to play the ukulele and this person is an incredible jazz singer and then this person's like amazing with classical text and this person does some like really cool vocal sounds that are on whatever, and then you go home and you're like, okay, this can all kind of come together? Or do you in real time be like, okay, can we access all of your skill sets and just see what happens in this circumstance, and then you build from there with the like, are you a separate person or with?
That's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. I usually sort of sketch with the company. So sort of like a general idea of something with the company. And it's like, oh, Temidayo is an amazing vocalist and has, just like you said, like jazz vocal abilities. And that actually makes a lot of sense here in what we were already thinking in terms of this dance pass sort of covering up the transition from scene 2 into 3. So this is a perfect place for us to try that little thing that we already sketched, that little thing that we already tried. And what if it crosses stage and then that actually changes the location that we're in from the beginning to the end of it. And sort of marrying, I do kind of go away and marry whatever we're finding with how it best serves the story that we're telling, I think. And then once we come back into the space, inevitably, I always say, the worst thing that you can do as a director is be unprepared. And the second worst thing that you can do as a director is be inflexible in what you've prepared. Yeah. So it's a little bit of both, where it's like I laid out exactly what I think it will look like. And then you can't cover your eyes, ears, and nose to what's happening in the room, though, and what's working, what's not working. And I appreciate my company so much and all the actors that I work with, and indulging my off-the-wall ideas as we try them. And then I always know that a room is great when something doesn't work and you end up on the floor laughing.
Giggling, yep.
Rather than something doesn't work and like the vibes are horrible. Yeah. Because it's like, no, we're going to try big things. We're going to make big swings, and some of them are going to be bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like we're forgetting that it's called a play. Like we're playing. I mean, like, yes, like again, language, this has become my adult thing of just like really, I don't know how this has happened, but like really like words, like this is play. We are, there is a play that we are producing ultimately that is like end result, but what are we doing in the process? Like we hopefully are playing to get there. Like it's process, right? And so to undermine that is in and of itself its own like beautiful exploration, I think in my opinion, undermines the final conclusion of the play, because what are you actually doing and what are we creating if not enjoying and or falling and giggling our way through it? I don't quite see the purpose personally.
Absolutely. And also I think that a product always reflects the way in which it was made. Yes, I think there's an energetic transfer from the company and where the company is and the mindset and the community to the audience. Something we talk a lot about with Machinal, which is a play that shows the face of the machine of modern society. Modern meaning 1927, but it's written in such a way that because of the expressionist forms, it's super timeless. And it's very obviously an allegory for the machine that we live and work in, especially as women, but in general in our society. And something I'm sort of obsessed with is making every single day in the rehearsal room so radically human, because we're trying to tell the story of of this machine, and we can't tell the story of this machine while acting like this machine.
Yes.
And so I also, have incorporated inside of this piece with my choreographer, Madison Hillegas, who's a literal genius. All of these moments with the company where we really see the humanity. So there's this sort of lens on this machine play where we see a company helping each other to do what they need to do. There's moments before and after the play where we really get into that before we slip into the allegorical part. And so the human inside the machine, we have to convolute ourselves. We have to fit into it. It hurts. It squeezes us. It's not right. And yet, how do we make that work on us in order to get by? And what could it look like if we could just be human?
I love that. I love that so much. Speaking of humans, how do you go about finding the folks that you tend to work with? Do you have, obviously, like when you're working in Tectonic, there's a company and it has a different kind of, inherent structural system because it's its own thing. But, even within that, or if you are moving beyond that, do you have certain folks that you're like, you are my people and I pretty much, go with you and ride with you through and through? Or is it like dependent upon the project? I need a different kind of person. How do you find your assistants, associates, all of that? Like they're your humans in your bubble.
Yeah. I follow my heart. Generally. And I have such a wonderful, wide community of folks. If you look at the designers on Machinal, for instance, I've met them through so many different ways. Hanji, our costume designer, is amazing. They actually costumed me when I was in a production at NYU all the way back then. And they gave me a corset, but also an ass corset, which has always stuck with me.
Yes. If it's what amazing. I think it is, then like we all could use one in our closets. We all could use an
ass corset. Yes, I played the widow in Taming of the Shrew, and Hanji really, really costumed me down. So I've always wanted to work with them, and I've asked them a couple times, and finally it's come to fruition here, and we're working together on this incredible really tight concept of suiting. So everybody in the production is working from layers of suiting that have, over the course of time, being through the machine. There are, for instance, like one of the buttons might be buttoned wrong, but it is then sewn so that is the natural way that garment would work, sort of the way that we sew ourselves into the machine to sort of make it work. And so Hanji and I are having a lot of fun with that. Rochelle and I worked on Here There Are Blueberries together. Rochelle is the set designer. Colleen is our lighting designer, and Colleen and I worked together on both Paradise Square and The Great Gatsby. And so it's just, you find your heart people and the people who you just know align with your values and with your aesthetics and with your level of curiosity. I just think all these people share that curiosity and that wanting to find new and interesting ways of expressing through our art form. And yeah, you start a little one person parade, and then over time you just look behind you and in front of you and around you, and you just sort of end up having a beautiful full parade of wonderful weirdos who are just as curious. So
I love that. Have you been using the same monologue for years? Are you gearing up to apply for BA, BFA, or MFA programs and need pieces for that process? Or maybe you just have no idea where to even start with monologue hunting? I get it, and that's why I offer monologue sourcing. This is a unique process where I find monologues chosen specifically for you. So many artists pick pieces based on external labels like type or for roles rather than finding material that represents who they truly are. So here's how it works. We'll meet virtually and you'll share all about who you are, your passions, values, beliefs, and everything in between. Don't worry, I will help guide you through this process. Then I'll get to work finding monologues that fit you like a glove. With years of experience sourcing pieces for hundreds of artists, I've seen the difference it makes to have a monologue that genuinely feels like you. So, if you want to feel empowered about the monologues you bring into rooms and use for auditions, I would love to help you find them. And because you're a listener of the Empowered Artist Collective podcast, I'm offering an exclusive rate. Head to empoweredartistcollective.com/podcast promo to register and claim the special offer. That's empoweredartistcollective.com/podcast promo. I cannot wait to help you find monologues you absolutely adore. Do you have specific assistants or associates? And if you do, how do you find them? Or if you don't, where do they find you?
Yeah. So my friend Grace, who is my associate director on this, God bless Grace. She's a genius. She's because I'm about to associate again too. I still associate all the time. So I'm about to associate for Mark Bruni on Billie Jean at Chicago Shakes. And Bruni and I work together as well on The Great Gatsby. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Grace is so much of a better associate than I am. Oh my gosh, she's so good. She has like everything is a friggin' spreadsheet, and it's like so total in its thoroughness, and that is not my particular skill set. And so I'm learning a lot from her. I actually met her working on The Great Gatsby. She came in and observed, and then kept in contact with me, and so now we're working together, and boy, am I glad we are. We have like such complicated tracking and transition in Machinal, and everything sort of comes out of these desk drawers, and it's like multiple different drawers, and like which one of the things goes in and comes out at any given point. And I just am always looking over to Grace, help. And she always has the answers. So that is one way, but I think it's always, for me, it's always been different. It's always, and it's similar to with designers, is that it's just like, does my heart pull towards your heart? Are our curiosities aligned? And everyone has their own unique strengths when they associate. And mine, as I said, are very different from Grace's.
What would you say are yours?
Actually,
come on, lean in.
Well, no, the problem is that I'm always think that I have like the directing answers to things. And so I'm like over eager, and I'm sitting there like squirming with how I'm going to fix the thing. And it's honestly exhausting, even for me. And I know for everyone who I associate for, they love me. We all have very good relationships, but I'm
clearly,
just like, gosh, I'm insufferable. But it's because I'm curious, and because I care so deeply. I can't see something in front of me and not care so deeply. So that's my level of I guess.
I want to reframe it. So, I mean, I'm not your therapist, but I want to reframe that in a way that becomes your superpower, because what I hear, which is not how you said it, was that you are so present with what is happening in front of you, that your creativity is sparking at rapid fire in a way that you have so many ideas that I imagine whoever the director is on said project is super excited to have you as a sounding board and also a collaborative partner to bounce said ideas off of, is what I'm hearing.
That is true. Thank you for reframing that for me. It is true.
You're welcome.
And I will take that. Thank you.
Yeah, yes. That's what I'm hearing. And that's what I'd love, for the narrative to continue being, because, so much of it's that, actually, not that I'm here to boof, but we are all we're taught to just, certainly as women, to make ourselves palatable and small, and to not take up so much space, and to, make sure that we don't have egos and blah, 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 blah. And ultimately, I think, what I've been continuously grappling with myself as a person who inherently has an energy that I don't do much and I do take up space. And that has been my Achilles heel, for better or for worse. But there's something about us belittling the greatness of ourselves that actually doesn't give people permission beyond and around us to also do the same for themselves, but also it feels really cool to be next to somebody who, when it's not done in a cocky way, just when they know who they are and they share who they are and their brilliance, you're I want to see it. Or I want to experience. There's something that it's a chemistry energy thing of relating and actually bonding and actually fascination. And so for me, I just like, I want all of us to just be able to own what we do in a way that just gives other folks permission to do that for themselves, and then also gives ourselves permission to continue just like growing and expanding, because like, everything's so hard anyway.
That's
like,
right.
You know, so you are brilliant at being an associate because you wouldn't continue being called back to do it by these incredible folks if you weren't, and they didn't know that they needed you to do their vision without you next to them. So yeah, I'm just affirming.
No, honestly,
I
can cancel my therapy appointment for the week. I appreciate you. No, it is
Great.
true. It is true. That is what is special about me. And that is
correct.
That is what also makes me
the director you are. Exactly. Right. Yeah. And I hear it from the way that you're talking about your collaborative processes, is like how much you admire the folks that you choose to work with, or you have the privilege of working next to. Is like there's a clear admiration that there are people who know things that you don't know, or operate in a way that you don't work, that like you get to then soak up at like a sponge, and that only informs your collaboration and creativity. And that isn't inherent for everyone. Like I just, you know, like that isn't a thing that everybody feels, and that isn't how everyone operates, and that is then your special sauce. I think that is a beautiful thing, that people are like, oh yeah, like full collaborator when we're working with Amy. Like that's it, like real collaboration at the core of the work, and yeah, like full sensorial, all-encompassing vision of entering into the craft, which is pretty dope, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I never, something I said to myself very early on, the first time I did a major regional gig was when I was working on Paradise Square at Berkeley Repertory Theater. And I saw the costume shop for the first time. And Tony, our costume designer, was sort of showing us different fabrics and how we were putting them into these, you know, 1860s garments, and how we were creating all of these really lush costumes with so many different fabrics on each one. And I just was in such awe. And I felt in that moment, I was like, never lose this awe at being able to. And Matt, who was our wig designer, was, you know, watching him pull through every individual hair on those wigs and make something that is just astonishing. And like, we get to work with these artists, artisans, people who are at the very top of their field doing something I could never begin to imagine being able to do. And inside of, you know, it's so easy to just look at a wig and note it and be like, that hairline's too far back, you know? And it's like, okay, we can give a note on a wig, but let's also imagine how virtuosic it is that we get to have this wig in the show. So that's something that I just never want to lose.
Well, you've had that since your Fiddler story. There was this deep sense of awe the second you sat down in that chair and watched Fiddler. Like, I think, you know, if we really were to dial it back, and again, I'm not a therapist, so what do I know? But I've been therapized my whole life, and my mom's a social worker, so I think it's just like in my, you know, deep, deep blood here. But, you know, everything goes back to just like our childhood, for better or for worse. Totally. You know, it's like, and so the more we can go back to that joy, the awe, the inspiration, the thing that before we were, all of life beat it out of us. Like that arguably is what we were all ultimately, consciously or subconsciously, I think, searching for, is like really just connecting again to that core thing that just makes us feel alive. It makes us feel full and curious. And, you know, I remember when I studied abroad in Italy, the Accademia dell'Arte, so it was like very physical theater, mask work. And I remember one of our classes in our first, I don't know, week of being there was like a full day. And I've taught this in master classes in like truncated versions, but that was a full day, starting the day as babies and then going through till you die in your physical body. And we did a version of that in grad school as well in my physical theater class. And I guess I've also, again, taught this, but to do a full embodiment for like hours of what does it feel like, not just like skipping of like baby to toddler to teen, like we're going like age by age by age in your body and noting these like little small micro movements. They have to be micro in order for you to span an entire lifetime and to actually feel that shift within your body and your spirit and your soul to know what those little things are, and then come your old age in that same body that you've now aged over the course of hours in, to feel the things that have had to shift, was a really, I think, important and valuable lesson for me as an actor, for sure, but just also as a human, where we take for granted that there are these little things that we know in our bodies that we don't consciously know in our minds anymore, or vice versa, that we think ourselves out of. It's like, no, your body's lived through the thing, and it knows deep down that childhood awe and wonder of just experiencing something for the first time. And what a beautiful thing that we as artists can do that when we encounter new work and material and a new room of collaborators that you've never, ever, ever been with beforehand. And that this amalgamation of energy in one space, you all get to discover together for the first time. Like, what a beautiful thing we get to do.
And then it's such a beautiful extension as a director, always thinking of what happens when you see this for the first time, because you're taking care of the audience in that moment as well. Because the audience will be brought into the space and see it for the first time. So the more that we can take care of that first time energy, those, new eyes on something, that, we don't want to lose that, because that also means that we're taking care of the people who are coming in to our space with those new eyes.
Yeah. Besides the beautiful box of perfumes, how else do you feel like you take care of folks? I start audience or in the room. Yeah,
in either the room. Or. In the room, I start every day. I always, at the beginning of the process, ask for folks to think about what warm-ups they love. And every single day we start with a warm-up led by a different person from the company. So we've done everything from religious singing in the round, to massage circles, to chakra work, to yoga, to our one of our brilliant tap dancers, Veronica, had us all turn around, and she did, tap dance rhythms, and we had to replicate them, not looking at her. Wow. And so everyone has their own virtuosities, and so that's another way of bringing it into the space, is to give the gift of sharing those things and sharing the moment of connection with everybody at the top of the day. So I love that practice. And I always like to share food. I think it's very important to share food with people. And so always at the beginning of processes and specific days during as well, making sure that we have food to share and time to eat together. That's something Orlando taught me, Orlando Pibotoy, who was my clowning teacher, who did a very similar exercise where we had to be born into the world. So I think sharing food is important, and I check in with folks a lot. I just sit down and be people with people at the end of the rehearsal or at the beginning of the rehearsal. Just say, what do we need? What are we lacking? What are we feeling? This part of the desk isn't working for us. How can we address that? How that's making this job harder? Let's look at that, so that the actors don't feel left behind by creative, or like their thoughts, feelings, and experiences aren't valued, because they should be. Yeah, it's a really, really simple answer. But
what about for the audience?
Taking care of the audience. Well, my dramaturgy practice is very much, I phrase it in this way, where we are taking care, when we're looking at the dramaturgy, we are taking care of the time a play was written in. We were taking care of the time a play was written about. We are taking care of the time the play is being made in. And we are taking care of audiences present and future to this play. And so, for instance, when we were working on Here There Are Blueberries, we had to take care of the mid-2000s. We had to take care of the World War II era, which it was about. We had to take care of bringing the show into all the individual cities that we bring it into. And we changed things about it because those cities have different audiences. And the person who we really have at the front of our mind all the time is the kid in Ohio.
Yeah.
And we really want that play to resonate with the kid in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And how can we make sure that the kid in Ohio and the aristocrat in New York come to the play and both get something out of it where they can go home and they can actually assess their own place in society, mm-hmm. their own role in the well-being of other people. And I think that often comes from forms, heightening forms. Rather than talking directly about something that's happening right now, if we can allow for the things that the theater does well to heighten them, to get mm-hmm. us rather than in a thinking place, in a feeling place about these things, then it's more likely to stand the test of time, which is exactly why I think Machinal has done that.
I love that. If I were somebody who is wanting to put more of a directing hat on, and it's newer to me, or I guess I've done it and no one's ever told me that is what it was, what would you recommend would be your director starter kit for folks?
Okay, well, this is my very nerdy answer, which is go to the library. Mm-hmm. I'm such an immense fan of the public library system, as well as the university library system. I'm always at the special collections. And I think just following where your curiosities lead you without judging them mm-hmm. is the quickest way to get genuine inspiration. And when I was in school, I had a professor who gave us this assignment to write a monologue from the perspective of a specific person who she gave us and to perform it in their idiolect that they would have had at that time. And none of these people ever had any voice or video recording of them. So it's something that you had to generate. And I was given Alice Liddell, and that's Alice from Alice in Wonderland, the real person who it's sort of based on, and her letters with Lewis Carroll, who wrote it. And I actually got to go to NYU's special collections, and I got to touch and go through all the letters between them. And it was just the most satisfying thing to touch those objects, to look at those, the way that their handwriting was, the way that it indicated the time, the turn of the century from the 1800s to the 1900s, and their ways of thinking, the ways that intimacy has changed over time. And that just like I was oozing inspiration, and I wrote way more than we had to write. I worked on that way more than we had to for that assignment. But it was one of those first moments that I felt that. And then now in my practice as both a dramaturg and director, which I actually distinguish very little between those roles and those duties. But I'm always in special collections. I'm always wanting to touch and wanting to be as close to primary sources as possible. And when you can't be at those primary sources, for instance, if I really wanted to watch the very first production of Les Mis, for instance, then mm-hmm. I always love going to the New York Public Library Toft Theater on Film and Tape. Going to these places and being able to take in theater that we weren't maybe alive for, or that we weren't able mm-hmm. to see, and just watching plays that really work, watching mm-hmm. plays that really do the thing, is, I think, one of the most satisfying, exciting things to do. The other thing for a person who's feeling like they might want to go into directing is just reaching out to the folks who you admire and just getting in the room with them. I've been so fortunate to work with people through an assisting and associate lens who every time I try to go to grad school, they're like, why would you go to grad school? That's what this is. And I'm like, I've been getting paid modestly, but getting paid to essentially go to grad school for a very long time, working with brilliant artists. And part of what it took was sitting next to Moisés, my mentor, and every note that he would give or everything that he would say, I was having very similar thoughts already. And it wasn't that I needed to learn to have those inspirations. It was that I needed to learn to trust them and to listen to them. Yeah. And it took me watching this, very honored and well-respected man of the theater and saying, oh, wait, we have a lot of the same impulses, for me to actually start to validate my own impulses.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I think it's helpful for folks to be affirmed in maybe things that they already know, or to hear things multiple times in different ways, or to hear things for the first time and be like, oh, it doesn't have to be something that's like monumentally huge. It's like, oh, let's send a little love note. Let's go to my library for the first time. Let's get Libby and download a bunch of things and listen to them or watch them or read them. I think it's wonderful advice. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
For anybody who wants to reach out and learn more, work with you, what within your boundaries is the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, you can pretty easily find my website, amymarieseidel.com, pretty easy. And I'm always, there are definitely moments when I have an influx of people who want to chat, and I'm like, yes, how is September? But I just love chatting with people and meeting other curious minds. So for sure, you can reach me through my website, and I look forward to it.
I love it. Thank you so much for going on this journey and being so open and present and thoughtful and curious and vulnerable in all of it. It's so palpable to me, even through, this medium, how much you care about the work and the art and the craft and the collaboration above all. And I think it's so special that you are in rooms making with people, and how lucky we are to have work that you are helping facilitate or being a part of in our zeitgeist at the moment. I'm just really, really grateful that you're in this space and that you shared your work and your process here with our listeners. So thank you.
That's actually making me emotional. Thank you. That means the world. One of the community agreements that we always start with in my processes is it's okay to cry. And
always.
The reason that I always write that is, yes, for everybody, but mostly for me, because I'm a big crier.
Same. I'm like watching you like start to tear up, and I'm like, oh, cool. I'm just crying now also. So here we are. On that note, thank you for being in this space.
Thank you so much. What a gift it is that you bring to everyone as well, having these very candid human discussions. So
thank you.
We all benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for today's episode. I hope you walk away with some fresh insights, feel inspired, and a little more empowered to take the next step on your artistic journey. Remember, whether it's a small shift or a big breakthrough, every step forward counts. You've got this, and we're here cheering you on every step of the way. If you found today's episode helpful, don't forget to hit subscribe so you'll never miss out on the discussions we have each week. And if something today really resonated with you, please leave us a review. It truly is one of the best ways to help other artists find our podcast and join in on the conversations. Plus, we feel the love too when you do. And don't keep all this goodness to yourself. Share this episode with your people or post about it on social media. Be sure to tag at Empowered Artist Collective and at @JenniferApple_ so we can see what's landing for you and keep the conversation going. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being a part of this incredible community. Keep creating, keep thriving, stay empowered. I'm Jennifer Apple. Until next time.